Good evening and welcome to the Talking Till Dawn podcast, where we explore all things strange, macabre and unexplained. I'm Michael Whitehouse and I am joined by the always inquisitive Mr. Martin Yates.
Hello, how you doing?
I am good, sir. All the better for talking to you. Tonight's episode is something a little different. As it's the season to be jolly, we've researched some truly unnerving Christmas-themed mysteries, a trilogy of unsettling true events to see you into the new year and beyond. We'll be releasing all three sometime across the festive season. The last one may be going out in January, I believe, Martin.
Yeah, I think maybe January 1st or 2nd or somewhere around there.
Excellent.
Damn it, I've put a date on it. Now I have to do it.
It'll be in January at some point.
Yeah.
So each episode of these mini episodes will be a little shorter than our usual runtime, but we'll be back at normal length. That's what she said in January.
Nothing normal about your length, Mike.
I know, that's true. That's true. 'Tis a goblin's... No, I'm not going to go there. So, a word of warning for tonight's episode. This is a mystery, a real-life mystery which involves real descriptions of terrible murders and disappearances. So, if you find this sort of stuff too disturbing, it might be better to listen to some of our less grisly episodes. We are going to do true crime episodes like this. Martin, you're particularly interested in that side of things, aren't you?
Yeah, we've got a few potential episodes lined up from the true crime side of things.
Yeah, and amongst the sort of paranormal and weird sort of unexplained stuff as well. So anyway, are you sitting comfortably, Martin?
Mm-hmm.
Have you locked your doors?
I hope Gemma has locked the doors.
Oh, may I say at this point, my wife is in the next room wrapping Christmas presents. So if you hear, and watching Love Actually.
Okay.
So that'll set the atmosphere. She's just looked at me through the glass door.
She's well ahead of the curve, man. We're recording this on the 12th of December. It's quite early.
Yeah.
She's prepared.
Christmas honestly starts in our household like from the 31st of October. I'm all with Halloween and I'm all, and I love Christmas as well, but my wife Kirsty particularly loves Christmas.
Yeah.
And when the 1st of November comes, immediately we watch The Nightmare Before Christmas because it's like half Halloween, half Christmas. And then throughout November we start watching Christmas films, and then December we do it properly. We stop for Planes, Trains and Automobiles, of course, around Thanksgiving.
I don't even have a Christmas tree, on the other hand.
No.
Nah.
But you have a Christmas tree in your heart.
I'm not huge on Christmas, but...
Some people aren't. You don't have to be. I think there's nothing...
I quite like walking around looking in, peering in people's windows at all the Christmas trees, ominously.
That's an entirely different podcast. Confession. Like, we like researching stalkers, and Martin's our man in the field.
No, I like the feel of the season. I just don't tend to spruce the place up.
There's nothing worse than forced fun. That's what I think. It's like I wouldn't force something that's like you've got to be totally into Christmas. It's the same, and totally true of New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
You've got to go and have fun on New Year's Eve.
Well, New Year's Eve is particularly tough time for some people, I think.
Yeah.
More so than Christmas, and Christmas can be, but New Year's Eve, obviously, you're a year older, and what's happened over the last year, you tend to look back on it and what might happen in the future, and I think that hits a lot of people pretty hard.
Definitely.
We'll probably cut all this shit out.
That's a good segue to head into a really, really depressing crime that's unexplained and took place at Christmas. So our first mystery takes place in December of 1993 near Austin, Texas. In the days leading up to that Christmas, friends and family had witnessed Latricia White, a nurse and mother of two, being involved in a number of heated arguments with her boyfriend, Lee Herman Wackerhagen. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Lee Herman Wackerhagen Jr. Lee was 38 at the time, and several people came forward after these events to say that he had a bad temper. In fact, one witness claimed that just before Christmas there was an argument between Lee and Latricia, and it was so vicious that it boiled over into a physical confrontation where both ended up on the floor fighting each other. Lee was allegedly a controlling boyfriend and wanted to know where Latricia was at all times, so it's not too difficult to draw the connection between his fits of anger and his alleged jealousy.
Doesn't sound like a very placid relationship, let's put it that way.
No, definitely not.
Doesn't sound like a particularly nice man.
No, but then there are always two sides to a story. And I think with a case like this,
Yeah.
people
Wow.
are being interviewed after these terrible events. People are framing it. They're looking for other things in the past to kind of explain it as well.
Sure. Yeah.
On the 22nd of December, one of these arguments surrounding something as small as Lee's 9-year-old son, Chance Wacker-Hagen, leaving a faucet running, that was enough to almost split the couple apart. However, this time, witnesses stated that it was Latricia who was yelling at Lee and their son before leaving the vicinity away from the witnesses. The family were seen in public at a restaurant a couple of days later, so this was just before Christmas, and everything seemed fine, but things were obviously not fine, or certainly they were about to be. Tragic.
Yeah, it sounds like things are blowing hot and cold, kind of
Yeah.
massive explosion and then back to normality and then problems again, like a roller coaster.
Yeah. I think as well with sort of volatile relationships, that's how people persuade themselves to stay in them, because they have these peaks and troughs where they can be like, oh, well, everything's fine now.
Yeah, they have like honeymoon periods and yeah.
So when Latricia's father grew worried that he had not heard from his daughter for more than a day, he travelled to her home, and what he found was something no parent should ever have to see. Latricia was in her bed and she'd been shot 6 times in the head with a .22 caliber weapon. Lee and Chance, the 9-year-old son, he was nowhere to be found. When police arrived, they found no sign of struggle or anything missing, so it didn't seem to be a robbery of any kind.
No.
It was as though Latricia had been killed there as she lay sleeping, with Lee easily being the main suspect. Within 3 days, a warrant was put out for his arrest. He was wanted for the murder of his girlfriend. And
it usually is in these kinds of cases. I think it is statistically, when a woman is killed, very often it is the husband or spouse or boyfriend.
Yeah.
Much more often than it's a stranger.
Yeah, you also get that, I think, when like children go missing. A lot of the time there's a lot of suspicion on the parents.
Yeah.
And sadly, there have been instances where that has been the case.
Yeah.
So at this point, a warrant's been put out for Lee's arrest. 3 days later, Lee's pickup truck was discovered 30 miles away from their home. Unfortunately, there was no sign of Lee or his son, Chance. What investigators did find shocked them. In the truck, they discovered a number of unopened Christmas presents. The wrapping paper was covered in blood, and Lee had also left behind his hunting rifle and his wallet.
Right.
Despite an extensive manhunt, Lee Wacker-Hagen and his son were never found. And to this day, Latricia White's brutal murder remains unsolved. So what happened to Lee and Chance? And is the simplest explanation the correct one?
I mean, it does sound like maybe either he's killed her and left, or it could be, I hate to say it, like a murder-suicide situation where maybe him and the child are no more by his own hand. That seems a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course Lee's family leapt to his defence and stated that he would never have done such a thing. But his ex-wife was interviewed after Latricia's murder and Chance's disappearance.
Yeah.
And she claimed that he was violent in that relationship.
I mean, nobody ever thinks that their beloved family members are capable of doing stuff like that. But I guess the question is, if you did believe they were capable of doing something like that, would they be your close family member? Or would you have long ago distanced yourself? Yeah. People don't tend to show their darkest sides to...
Yeah,
we don't know what's around us. We don't know what kind of relationships, what horrors other people go through, because that's never reflected publicly. And although that may well be his family, his parents, his brothers and sisters, they maybe just have never seen into that world.
Absolutely. And the flip side of this as well is that, so his ex-wife claimed that he was violent in that relationship. And then there were others saying that they'd seen evidence of his bad temper and jealousy towards Latricia. But, often, especially when people have had bad breakups, it's very rare that you hear people talking well of each other.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So there's no way to really tell at this point, but it would seem pretty cut and dry that Lee had murdered Latricia, then left with his son, and due to the blood in the pickup truck, perhaps he'd murdered Chance as well, then disposed of the bodies in the surrounding countryside. However, there are real problems with this. Because this was in 1993, where this took place, DNA analysis was not mature at the time.
Okay.
However, investigators were able to determine that the blood did not belong to Latricia, at least. But that, it was inconclusive as to whether any of the blood was Chance or Lee's.
So just to be clear, there was blood in the truck that they couldn't pin to Latricia. It may have belonged to the spouse or the child, but they're just not sure. Is that right?
Yeah, it could have been Lee's, could have been his son Chance's, but the tests were inconclusive.
Okay.
So Lee's family argued that an unknown third party had killed Latricia and then kidnapped Lee and Chance, potentially killing Lee before the pickup truck was abandoned. Another theory was put forward that Lee did murder Latricia but then ran afoul of a random carjacking. Investigators at the time did note that the area where the pickup truck had been abandoned was known for high levels of crime.
Yeah. I mean, that seems far-fetched, but it's one of those things where if he has committed that crime and he drives out through an area that is known for carjackings, he's still at just as much of a risk from carjackings as everyone else who passes through. So it's not impossible, but it does seem far-fetched to me.
It feels far-fetched because obviously the murder's such an extraordinary event.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of, like, you see that in certain films where they depict, like Psycho. It happens in Psycho where someone commits a crime and then they end up in this completely random
of course.
situation.
Yeah, that's the whole setup. Yeah.
And then also the likes of Pulp Fiction's probably a really famous one with Bruce Willis, and he runs over the crime boss.
Yeah.
And then they find themselves in a basement.
Yeah. But death and murder are a lot more common in fiction than they are in reality.
Yeah.
On the other hand, just to play devil's advocate there, murder, although we maybe read a lot about true crime and watch a lot of movies and read a lot of fiction that involves murder mysteries and things like that, actually the murder rate, certainly in the UK now and in the US, maybe slightly higher at that time, but still very, very, very few people were murdered out of 100,000. I don't know what the actual number is, but you're talking like far less than 100 people out of 100,000 are murdered.
Yeah, definitely. That was one theory, that maybe they'd been the victim of a carjacking after the initial murder. But while it's easy to point the finger at Lee, there are some unsettling points to be made about the murder. First, 4 months after Latricia was murdered, Latricia's father claimed to receive a phone call, and that Chance, the 9-year-old boy, that he was on the other end of the line.
Okay.
Latricia's father heard a young boy shout, "Help me," twice.
Sorry, before or after the kidnapping?
After.
Right.
So you've had the murder.
Uh-huh.
And then you've had this is like 4 months after Latricia's murder.
Later, right? Yeah, sorry, yeah, okay.
And since Latricia's been murdered, no one's seen Lee or Chance other than finding the truck with the blood in it.
It's not inconceivable that would be a hoax, maybe, if this is in the press, but that's still...
Yeah, so that was what some people thought. So Latricia's father heard a young boy in the line shouting, "Help me," twice before the call ended. Some believe the call was a prank or hoax, as you said, Martin, but given the number of missing persons who have subsequently been found years later especially, it feels like in the last 10 years there have been a number of cases where people have been held for like 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Wasn't there some girl who came forward in the US who basically said, "Listen, I think I'm this kid that went missing like 20 years ago. Yeah. And I've just figured it out."
Yeah, definitely. There's been that as well, but then there's also been people that have just been held in a basement somewhere for decades, and
people forgot they existed.
Yeah, so I mean, people have been held captive in some sort of maniac's home, so we can't rule out the possibility that Chance is still alive somewhere, being held against his will, either by Lee or by an unknown third party. So could Lee be holding him somewhere? It seems unlikely to me that he could live all these years without being detected.
Yeah, we know there's people like Fritzl who have kept people locked up for long periods of time, but that was their first and primary motive doing that. I want to keep these people under my control. It sounds to me like if he did commit the murder, he has committed the murder and he wants to run away and hide from the law. Yeah. Keeping a kid locked up as part of that seems weird unless that was his motivator, which it doesn't seem to be. And if anything, it seems almost like a hindrance to his plan of remaining undetected. I
mean, I did think that perhaps, like you say, maybe it being part of the plan, and who knows, Lee could have set up in the wilderness somewhere, or you You just don't know, but it does seem
Maybe.
far-fetched.
I feel maybe more likely that he would shoot the mother. The child's what age? What age is this child?
9 years old.
9 years old. So not completely unbelievable that he might shoot the mother and then take the child away and say to the child that something else has happened to the mother. Maybe put them into a school somewhere under a false name, come up with some story to say your name has to change because of this reason. It seems more likely to me that something like that would happen than he's in a cage somewhere. I guess, well, you just don't know, but certainly some of the cases where someone has gone missing, it's been more along those lines.
Yeah.
Not necessarily been physically held captive, but they've been living in a world made for them by their captor that's kept them hidden in plain sight.
Such a terrifying level of manipulation, that.
Yeah, but it happens, and that's what's frightening. People do that.
Absolutely. But there is another twist in the tale with this case which makes Lee's involvement even less likely.
Okay.
In 2016, the case was reinvestigated. While the murder remains unsolved at the time of this recording, investigators concluded then that Lee was no longer the prime suspect and that someone else had killed Latricia.
Okay.
So we don't totally know why this has been stated, but thanks to a resourceful Redditor named True Noise, I did find an old article from 2010 which also revisited the case.
Okay.
So the article appeared on Austin News KXAN, and it published some interesting insights from the families and the investigators. There was a few interesting tidbits I found in this article. Chance was not actually Latricia's biological son. Not only that, but Chance's biological mother claimed in the article that the relationship between Lee and Latricia was nowhere near as serious as Lee believed it to be.
Right.
So I wonder then if Latricia even looked on Chance as her son in any way, but I couldn't find any further information about that. But there were some online posts which suggested that arguments about Chance were what caused the murder.
Right.
But this then seems unlikely, as Latricia would not have had any claims of custody or anything like that.
Sure,
So.
but maybe, she went ballistic about the tap being left running, maybe arguments on that level. I mean, it sounded like that went pretty stratospheric from such a minor thing.
Absolutely.
Maybe it doesn't have to be about something as dramatic as custody. Maybe it could just be mundane things that are driving them over the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. From the custody line, Chance also stayed with his biological mother a lot of the time, so
yeah,
that kind of argument doesn't really seem to hold water. So Caldwell County Sheriff Dan, get this for a second name, he's a sheriff, and his full name is Dan Law. Made me laugh.
Brilliant. There's a good name in every episode we've done.
That's amazing. Dan Law, Sheriff Law.
I can't think of one that we've even looked at that doesn't have a great name in it.
I know, it's amazing.
I'm glad I've got a boring name, because if I had an interesting name, I'd be worried I was going to end up in one of these cases.
I know, I'd be just talking to myself, Martin. It'd been over near as much fun. The sheriff stated that someone had cleaned up parts of the crime scene. So they were trying to hide something that could have perhaps implicated them in some way.
Right. By clear up, you mean the truck or the house?
The house.
Right.
So someone had, I don't know how they've ascertained this, but someone has cleaned up something. Whether it was blood or whether it was actually something in the house that they realised somehow they'd figured out that it had been moved or done after the murder.
Right. Could still be the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have done stranger things than that, and it could a coping mechanism, just trying to get back into normality in some way, or sort of cleaning something up. But the Lee's truck, when it was found, it was near an airport, really near an airport.
Right.
So is it possible that Chance was taken far away?
Yeah, skip the country.
Yeah, the article also revealed that a 10-minute phone call was made from Lee's phone after Latricia's body was found. So even at that point, investigators believe Lee may have been alive at least a few days after the murder.
Right.
The article quotes a US Marshal, Hector Gomez, as saying that there is evidence that Lee was helped, perhaps by his family, to escape with Chance, citing an obituary placed in a paper.
Right.
Gomez believes this obituary was placed to make people think that Lee is dead when the family knows he isn't.
Okay, right. I mean, they
But it seems a bit of a leap to me.
it does sound like I know this sounds weird because they can't be hoping he's dead, but from their perspective, he's either dead or a murderer.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't seem completely incredible that they would go with the belief that he's dead and put an obituary in the paper because they want to protect his reputation. You know, that could be the motivation rather than covering up for him necessarily.
Oh, absolutely. And the article didn't go into any specifics about why. This is obviously a US Marshal who was brought in to the disappearance case.
Yeah, there's some aspect to that makes him suspicious.
At the time, and this is a few years afterwards that he's sort of talking about this publicly. And sometimes law enforcement experts do that, and then there's a book deal or so. I know that sounds very skeptical, but that does happen.
Or there's some reason they don't want to come out with that piece of information just yet. Some strategic reason.
The article says that Sheriff Law also suggested that he believes Lee fled to Mexico with Chance, and that's where they both currently are.
Okay.
So that article was kind of before the second investigation in 2016. So this was before that. But in an interesting aside, Latricia White's home can no longer be investigated because it burned down in an alleged electrical fire. And there's some terrible aftermath from the case as well, where Lee's father tragically committed suicide in 1999, which also begs the question as to whether he knew something or whether he was just so traumatised by the tragedy of son and grandson disappearing.
Yeah, it could just be distraught by what happened, yeah.
So all of this was made known in the 2010 article, but this was before the new conclusion that was made in 2016 that Lee is no longer the prime suspect.
Oh.
So who could be the prime suspect? It's been widely reported that Latricia was in a custody battle over her own biological child. So she had another child.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
An ex, essentially, is what you're saying here.
But we have to be careful about such accusations. They could be a totally innocent party, but there have been people making that argument.
Talking till dawn is not a court of law. That's just a disclaimer right there.
But that he was involved.
Yeah.
One thing is for certain, that whoever did commit the crime and commit the murder had great anger towards or hatred of Latricia White or someone like her. She was shot 6 times in the head at close range. To me, that infers
overkill.
Yeah, exactly. There's a level of anger or venting. So yeah, it's an interesting case. Terribly tragic. No one knows what's happened to the boy or to Lee.
Yeah, almost more tragic because we don't know what happened. It would be still absolutely terrible if they were definitely dead, but the fact that there's just no conclusion to it, that it's left hanging, the family clearly don't know whether to mourn or to keep hope. That's got to be really, really tough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then they're also being accused more recently of perhaps being involved in trying to get Lee out.
If he didn't do it and he is purely a victim in this, then that's hard as well, because this is someone who's a victim of a murder, and his family who have lost their son one way or the other. As you say, they're having to deal with it from both sides. They're not able to simply go, yeah, our son was killed, we can vent our rage at the person who did it, because they don't know whether he killed himself, whether they don't have any closure, any conclusion, and they don't have a clear position of being victims, and they don't have the clear position of being the family of the perpetrator. They're in a kind of weird limbo in between that. That's got to be hard.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like, I always feel sorry for the families when someone goes and does something terrible.
Yeah.
When they prove that they've done it.
Yeah.
And it's like, they can't mourn.
Yeah.
If that person's been killed, say like a school shooter or something like that.
Yeah.
They can't mourn that person really in the way that you should be able to.
Exactly. I totally agree. But even then they can say, well, I mourn maybe the child that he was when he was younger, or I think back to before he changed or whatever. When you don't even know what the person has or hasn't done, you don't even know how to, I imagine, you don't even know how to approach that, emotionally. So yeah, I can't even get my head around how horrible that must be.
No, yeah, absolutely. And so Merry Christmas, everyone. So I think that rounds up this mini episode. We will be back next time with the
sun's coming up.
Yeah, exactly. The sun's coming up. So we better go. We'll be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.
take care of yourselves. That was really creepy little take care of yourselves at the end there.
Will I stop recording this one?
Yeah. Yeah.